All right. Well, welcome everyone. We want to welcome you to our session one of the new Board Member Academy. I'd like to hand over this to our VSBA Executive Director, Sue Siglowski, who will introduce herself to you and officially open our new Member Academy. Sue, that's up to you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see all of you. My name is Sue Siglowski, and I am the Executive Director of the VSBA. I joined the VSBA staff in 2018 as the Director of Legal and Policy Services, and I've been serving as the Executive Director since 2019. I served on the Meadowy School District Board from 2005, I believe it was, until 2019. And Meadowy School District is located in Paulet, Vermont, in the southwestern part of the state. And I also served on the Supervisory Union Board as well. And even though it feels like a long time ago, I recall so clearly what it was like to be a newly elected school board member. So I can empathize with many of you right now. So on this slide, you will see a brief list of what I do with some of the more general responsibilities. It's fairly standard in what you would expect an executive director of a nonprofit organization to do. There are a lot of other things that I do that aren't listed here, and you'll probably, start to learn about some of those as time goes on. We'll move on to the next slide. I do have a law degree. I'm licensed to practice law in the state of Vermont. So I am able to help you with questions of a legal nature, with the caveat that I cannot provide you with legal advice or your school board with legal advice. School boards have attorneys that they work with specifically for circumstances where they need to have legal advice that's specific to their situation. But there are times where I'll have inquiries from school board members where I can provide some initial guidance or point you to what law is applicable. And I can also oftentimes point you to some other resources that might be helpful to you. So don't hesitate to be in touch with me if you have those type of questions. And then lastly, we're going to talk about school board services, a marathon and not a sprint. So I'd like to take this opportunity to officially welcome you to our new Member Academy and just say a few words to place your role as school board members into the larger context. I would also like to offer you a little bit of reassurance. Though the task of school board service may seem daunting at first, you will be okay. In fact, you will be better than okay. Each of you will be a great school board member. And how do I know this? By the fact that you are here today wanting to learn more about your role and the work of school boards in Vermont and taking the time out of your busy lives to be part of this academy. To me, that is proof that is needed that you will be excellent school board members. You have taken a very important and impactful first step already as a board member by attending. So welcome and thank you for being here. Instead of giving primary responsibility of our children's education to the federal government, our country's founders intentionally entrusted state and local citizens with public education through democratically elected school boards. This American heritage is a gift that requires continued attention and improvement to work well. And this can only happen when state and local actors in public education commit themselves to the pursuit of excellence. When it comes to school board service, there is no one specific training, school, or pathway to adequately prepare you to do this work. Don't worry, that is what the VSBA is here for. We are here to help prepare you as you embark on this journey in educational governance, starting with the new Member Academy, and also throughout your tenure as a board member. I will be speaking how we do that through the VSBA services at the second session, which is going to be on May 15th. So I'll tell you a lot more about how we support your work as school board members on May 15th during the second session. And here comes the reassurance part of what I want to say today. Without even realizing it, each of you already bring to the board table relevant knowledge, experience, and skills that will help you to become an effective school board member. What do I mean? Well, maybe you have participated in public service before, such as belonging to a community organization, a local club, or an association. Perhaps you have volunteered, held other elected positions, or served on other boards, be they nonprofit, private, or for-profit. I know at the very least, all of you have engaged in civil discourse at work with coworkers and at home with family members. All of these experiences have prepared you for school board service in one way or another. So be assured that you already have the prerequisite experience and skills to serve on your school board. Keep that in mind, especially during the tougher times. And yes, there will be tough times. And yet, at the same time, school board service is different from other types of board service. There isn't a whole lot of doing, for example. Unlike other boards, you don't raise money, hold fundraisers, or organize events. You are not expected to donate your own money to the district. Rather, it's a donation of your time that is required. Serving on a school board takes a lot of time, and it's more like a marathon than a sprint. It is complex and nuanced work, and it can take more than a year before you feel reasonably comfortable in your role. It becomes easier with an upfront investment of time to learn what your job is and what it is not. And that is why you are here today. And that is why I have faith that you will all be excellent school board members. Congratulations on your recent election or appointment to your school board. And thank you for making the commitment to serve the students in your district as entrusted by your voters. It is a great honor to work with people who donate their most valuable resource, their time, to public education. I will see you again next week, and now I would like to hand it back to Carrie Lamb, the Director of Operations.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Carrie Lamb, the Director of Operations for the VSBA. I've been here since 2001, so I've been here for a little while now. On the screen now, you can see my responsibilities at the VSBA. This is what I do on a daily basis there. I'm graphic designer, video production, communications, human resources, marketing, a diverse group of things that I do. And I also have served on my local school board. I served here on the Barre Town School Board for several years. And like Sue said, I can remember what it's like to be a brand new board member. I was actually a new board member when I was a new staff member. So it was quite a few years ago when I first got onto the Barre Town Board. Here's some of the reasons why you might reach out to me. Membership issues, website login, if there's problems logging in, ordering the VSBA publications. We have the essentials books and the law books. Event registration, you can find all of our registrations on our website under events. If you ever have any problems, or you could get a hold of me. I'm also in charge of communications, which is like the weekly emails. If you do not currently get the weekly email, you should be getting one every Tuesday from us. We try and compile all of our emails into one as much as possible, so that we don't fill your mailbox up and you can read them all at once. Also, you can contact me with general questions. I can lead you to the right person here at the VSBA. So please feel free to contact me anytime. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to the next VSBA staff member, Debbie Singheiser, who will introduce herself and facilitate the rest of the session tonight. Debbie?
And
Thanks.
before you start, Debbie, I just wanted to note there's people are saying that the chat is disabled, so they can't put their name in the chat. So they're asking if you'd like them to put it in the Q&A.
Yes, you can put it in the Q&A. Yes, thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody. I am Debbie Singheiser, and I am actually the newest member of the VSBA team. I joined VSBA as the Director of Board Services a little bit less than a year ago. It was actually late May of 2023. So in my role, I provide customized support to boards. in the form of training and board retreat facilitation. I facilitate community forums and do strategic visioning exercises with boards. I also support cohorts of board members, such as you, our new board members, board chairs. We have a forum for board chairs. And I also work closely with superintendent and chair teams. I also come from a policy governance background, so I work with policy governance boards. And I also work with individual board members as needed. So I'm always available with an email or a phone call if you have any questions or issues that you want to discuss. So that's a little bit about what I do at the VSBA. I also have had school board experience. Actually, it began about 12 years ago at this point. And I was a school board member at an international school in Kathmandu, Nepal. That was my first school board service. When my family and I moved back to the United States, we came to Vermont, and I ran for the Barstow Unified Union School District and served on that district board. You can see the dates there. During that time, I was chair for about 4 years. And Barstow Unified Union School District is part of the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union. So I served at the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union board level as well for a number of years. March of this year, 2024, I ran as a write-in candidate. I decided to get back into board service, and I won. So I'm back as board chair for the Barstow Unified Union School District. So I fit in this kind of weird category of being a new board member, a new old board member, or maybe it's an old new board member. I'm not exactly sure what, but I'm happy to be back serving at the Barstow Unified Union School District. So how can I help you? Well, I said before, I do quite a number of things at the VSBA, in addition to working with school boards and school board members in their professional training and development. I organize an annual conference every fall with the Vermont Superintendents Association, which you'll be hearing more about. We do monthly webinars, as Carrie mentioned at the outset. I organize those and find great speakers to help us out with those. I mentioned a couple of the forums that I chair, the Chairs Forum and the New Member Forum, which actually I saw some of your names earlier, and I believe a couple of you have already attended the new board member forum, which we hold every 6 weeks. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can related to policy governance, and just answer general questions that you might have related to school board rules and responsibilities. So with that, you've heard a lot about who the VSBA is and who Carrie, Sue, and I are. But what I'd love to do is to find out a little bit more about who you are. And on your screen, you'll see a QR code that if you have a mobile device, you can hover right over that QR code, and it should open up a 2-question survey. There's 2 questions. What is the name of your school district? And if it is part of a supervisory union, which one? And then there's a second question that will open up as soon as you answer that question, which is, what would you like to learn from this academy? So this is kind of a little expectations exercise. As I said, it's the same QR code for both questions. You should be able to see both of them. You'll answer this one first, and then it'll take you right to that second question about your expectations. And if you don't have a mobile device, another way you could do this is on your computer. You could minimize the Zoom screen and then go to menti.com, and it'll ask you to put in this code 81174571. So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit and give you a minute or two to get this done. And if you have any questions or troubles, feel free to just ask them in the Q&A box. And I'm going to stop sharing this PowerPoint so I can see if there's any questions.
It's okay. I have the questions. I think they need the PowerPoint in case they need to put those numbers in.
That's a good point, Carrie. I will go right back to those. So hoping everybody got into the survey because I'm going to stop sharing and start looking at the results. And I want to share the results with all of you. Excellent. I see some results coming up. I'm going to share my screen with you so we can all see what we've got going on here. And I'm going to delete this QR code because it's covering some of the names of our districts. So here we have the different districts that you all are representing. Great. I see a lot of diversity here, a lot of people from all over the state, from Addison, Wyndham down in the southern part of the state, Vernon, Heartland, Mill River, you're very close to where I am right now. MAU, excellent. So we'll be talking about school districts and how many there are in the state of Vermont. And I have to confess that I'm not even familiar with some of these. It's so funny. There's so many of them. But most of them I definitely know. OSSU. Great. Let me see if I can get you to the next question. I want to see what your expectations are. Here we go. So this is a word cloud, and you probably have done word clouds before in different trainings. So what happens basically is as you put in your responses, the cloud pulls up what you all are putting in, and the ones that are coming up the most frequently tend to be the ones that are in the middle, and they're a little bit larger font than the other ones. So the ones, there's lots of great responses here. So yeah, roles and rules tend to look like those are the biggest, the largest ones. So that means that that's what many of you are saying, but other people are saying responsibilities. Yep. Oh, look, responsibilities just took a bigger position there. Roles of board members, very similar to roles. Conflict of interest. Oh, that's a good one. The role the new board member plays. Yep. Legislation. Progressive trends, legislative relations, communication techniques, everything I can. Subcommittee versus the full board. Good. And ways to engage with the community. Yep. I think we're going to touch on all of these. Obviously, we're not going to get to them all today, but between today and next week, when we meet again, I think we're going to touch on all of these. And if we don't, then we obviously, I think we will. But if there is something at the end of the academy that you still haven't had an answer to, you're always welcome to reach out afterwards. All right. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. It was really fun. These webinars are great, but the one limitation is it's hard to be very interactive. So I wanted to try that Menti today to see how that worked. All right, back to our PowerPoint. So here's our agenda for the rest of the day. We did our welcome and introductions, and we just finished expectations. So we're going to spend some time talking about, or just looking at the overview, getting an overview of public education in Vermont. We'll spend some time talking about governance and what is good governance. And then I'm going to introduce you to the 6 pillars of the essential work of Vermont school boards. And we are going to be able to cover 2 of those pillars today, pillars 1 and 6. Before we launch into this, I wanted to ask the group here, and again, we're trying to keep the comments to the Q&A box. At the beginning, when you first were elected or appointed to your board, when we got your names and mailing addresses, we mailed out a welcome packet to the new board members. So if you didn't, and in that welcome packet was what we call, well, what is called the essential work of Vermont school boards. And so if you did not get that packet, could you please in the Q&A box right now, just type your name and mailing address so that Carrie has it so she can get a packet into the mail to you probably tomorrow so that you get this book as quickly as possible. That would be great. If you don't have a book on hand, don't worry. You don't need it for tonight. What I'll be doing is as we go along, I'll be referring you to the different pages in the book that we're talking about. So you can always make note of those pages. So when you do get your book, you can go in and take a look at those pages. So we're going to move straight through for 2 hours. It seems like a lot of time, but it's really not considering how much ground we have to cover. So I'm not even going to take a break, but here I invite you to take a break. If you need to do that, you can always step away. We are recording this session. So if you miss something, you'll have access to the recording later. But I just wanted to let you know that we're going to go straight through. My hope, actually it's my goal and my intent is to leave 10 minutes at the very end of this webinar so that if you have any questions, and of course they could be questions related to this webinar tonight or just some burning questions that you have about school board service in general that you would like some answers to, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you at the very end of the webinar. Typically, new board members have lots of questions, and so that's what we're here for, is to help you with those. All right, so that is where we're heading tonight. So as I said, we're going to start off with education law in Vermont. This is a very quick overview of what education law in Vermont looks like. Throughout your school board service, you will likely hear a lot about Vermont education law. And this flow chart basically is showing you how education legislation works with the key players and their respective roles. So in the legislature, there are actually education committees in both the House and the Senate, and they introduce bills that may or may not eventually become law, and if they are approved by both houses. The courts then interpret the laws that are relative to the Vermont State Constitution when laws are contested. The governor executes the laws along with the State Board of Education, which is a 10-person body appointed by the governor. And finally, we have the Agency of Education, or as many people call it, the AOE. And the AOE oversees Vermont's education system and provides support to school districts, which we will see in greater detail on the next slide. So for those of you who have the essential work of school boards, this is all described on pages 5 and 6 in the book. All right. So an overview of educational governance in Vermont. Let's take a quick look of where we as school board members fit into this whole system. The state of Vermont as a whole has ultimate responsibility for ensuring that all students receive substantially equal access to a quality education. This responsibility originates from the Vermont Constitution and is more fully described in Vermont statute. Education laws are found under Title 16, called Title 16 Education in our state law. To fulfill this important responsibility of ensuring that all students receive substantially equal access to a quality education, the state delegates a lot of authority to school districts, supervisory unions, and supervisory districts and their superintendents. The role of the Agency of Education, therefore, is to lead, support, and oversee the local governance structures. So pictured here is a 3-legged stool that represents the AOE. And we know from the previous slide that the AOE carries out education in accordance with the law. As such, it is charged with the oversight of Vermont's education system, and it assists school districts. So that is the first of its three main roles. The other two roles are leadership and support to local school districts. In Vermont's educational governance system, there are three different types of legal entities. We have supervisory unions, supervisory districts, and school districts. These entities are all governed by boards. And it is important to know which type of board that you serve on. So is your district part of a supervisory union? And if so, are you personally serving both at the district level board as well as the SU board? Or if your district is a supervisory district, then there's just one board, so you'd be serving on one board. I, for example, serve on my district board, which is the Barstow Unified Union School District, but I am not currently serving at the supervisory union level, at the RNESU level. So the descriptions of these types of legal entities and their boards are covered again in the Essentials book on pages 5 through 6, and all the legal terms in Vermont, and the legal terms can be found in the Vermont Law Book, which we will be talking about a little bit later, Vermont's Law Book. So here's a map of our state depicting the different supervisory unions, town boundaries, and school locations. I wanted to show this to you because it's a good opportunity for me to tell you about how many supervisory unions and supervisory districts we have. Right now, there are currently 56 in the state of Vermont, and we have more than 120 school districts within these supervisory unions. In the state of Vermont, there are approximately, we don't have an exact figure, but somewhere in the range of 850 and 900 school board members serving on all the different boards. So in terms of students, in 2023, our state enrolled a little more than 83,000 students. Now, if you do that math, you won't be surprised to see what a low student to board member ratio we have. In fact, we have the lowest student to board member ratio in the country. School districts vary in size from just over 30 students to close to 5,000 students. So this map that's done by the Agency of Education illustrates, as I said, the different supervisory unions and schools inside each of these, as well as the supervisory districts. And if you are a history buff and you'd like to learn about the history of public education in Vermont, there is a chapter devoted to that at the beginning of the Essentials book. And it starts with I think it starts with the French settlers, the earliest French settlers in Vermont, all the way through to 2015 with the passage of Act 46. So as you saw from the AOE map, the administrative units are numerous and relatively small, both in terms of number of students and geographical size, especially when you compare it to other states. There is also a high degree of local control over education in Vermont. As a result of this principle of local control, there is much variation among districts and by extension, the boards that govern these districts in Vermont. No two school boards look the same. So let's take a look at some of the examples of how boards in Vermont can differ. So here on your screen, you see a variety of titles that are used for school board members. You have school directors, sometimes people call you trustees, or simply school board member. There's also a variety of different titles of officers that serve on school boards. For example, some boards will call the head of their board their chair, while others will use the term president. Some boards will have a chair and a clerk on their board, and those are both officers, those are both, officer positions that are required by Vermont law. And that's all they'll have is a chair and a clerk, while others will have a chair, a clerk, maybe a vice chair or a secretary. So think about what your board uses in terms of titles and which officers that it has. Another variation is governance. Some boards, these are what you're seeing on your screen, are the three most common types of governance that boards use: results-based, policy governance, or traditional governance. So again, think about this question. Do you know what governance model your board is using? Because it is important to know which one and to learn as much as you can about it. Another variation is frequency of meetings. Some boards will meet once a month and others will meet twice a month. Another variation is committees, board committees. Some boards have committees and some don't. My board doesn't have any committees. We're a small board of 5, and we simply don't see the need for any committees. But other boards might have a curriculum committee, they might have a community outreach committee, facilities, finance, et cetera, et cetera. Even elections, when voters elect their school directors and vote on an annual budget, these occur at different times in Vermont. They do tend to all happen in late winter and spring, starting around town meeting day in early March, and they go as late as mid-May, which I think there's even some that are happening next week. So this highly diversified system of governance translates into differences among districts in terms of the way they deliver education to their students. For example, there is no statewide school calendar, and there is no statewide curriculum. There's also no statewide teacher contract, no statewide para bus driver contracts. Each supervisory union or supervisory district has its own contracts that are negotiated between the board and the local teachers or para driver associations. So in sum, as you've seen, there is a very high degree of localized control in Vermont education. I'm not saying that this is a good thing, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's just something that's worth noting. And as you serve on your school board, you will see both the challenges and the opportunities that this local control presents. So let's move on to this important term that we keep using, governance. We've already used it a few times this evening, and you may have actually heard it on the news and before tonight in the context of national or state government. It's a term that we hear a lot, but we don't really have the opportunity to define what it means. So what is governance? It's, again, one of those terms that we might have a general sense of, but we're not exactly sure how to define it. So in the context of school board work, let's talk about what governance is. So governance is actually a Greek word. It comes from the Greek language, and it literally means steering the ship. Governance is about setting the direction of an organization and ensuring the organization is always on course. Governance helps an organization. In our case, in educational governance, our organization is the school district, right? And what is the district's destination? This is something that we will talk about in a little bit, but our destination is defined by the district's vision. So I'll offer you tonight 3 different but related definitions of what governance means. So this definition you see in front of you is one that's offered to us by John Carver, who's the father of policy governance. And this is how, when he uses the term governance, this is what he means. This longer definition that you see is one that comes from the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. This is the definition that you'll find in the essential work of Vermont school boards on page 4, I believe. And this is a more technical definition, and I'll be quiet for just a second so you can read it. The third definition comes straight from the dictionary. Who doesn't love a good old-fashioned dictionary term, right? So this is how you would find, if you looked up the word governance in a Webster's dictionary, this is what it would say. So these are 3 ways you can think about governance. The definitions have some things in common, such as this idea of steering or moving in a certain direction. But let's get a little bit more specific for our purposes as school board members. So let's drill down a little bit. Sometimes I find it helpful to understand a new concept by considering what it is not and contrasting it with something. So in this case, let's contrast the word governance with management. Sometimes people will conflate or confuse governance with management or use the 2 words interchangeably. But governing and managing is actually 2 very different functions that carry different responsibilities. And yet they are both essential to running our school districts. So governance, which you're seeing on your screen right now, as we know, is steering the ship. And in this case, the ship is our district towards something, the what, which again is our vision. Or in the case of policy governance, for those of you who are on policy governance boards, you would hear this term not so much as vision, but as the ends policy. So governance is a process where the direction of the organization is set. Some will call this the strategic direction or strategic vision. And it's about being accountable to someone external to the organization, to the district, or in the case of the school district, it's our voters. Governance also provides us with a framework for decision-making. So that's governance. Now let's contrast it and compare it with management. Management actually is a Latin word, and it means hand. It's taking care of the day-to-day business of the organization. It has everything to do with operations of the district, the planning and the implementation of the how things are done. So it's the hand that guides the organization. So we as board members need to be clear in our own minds about this difference between governance and management. These 2 roles, and we need to be clear what they are in our minds and be able to identify who is responsible for what. So boards are responsible for governance. It's the what we do in a district, while the superintendent is responsible for the management. It's the how things get done. Another catchy way of thinking about it is boards assure schools are well run, but boards don't run the school. So effective school boards focus on the governance and leave the management to the superintendent. And when there is clarity around and deep understanding of their respective roles and responsibilities, the 2, the board and the superintendent, can work in partnership to help steer the district towards the vision and towards meeting its goals. So I'm going to take a pause right there so I can catch my breath and have a sip of water and see if anybody has a question or comment before we move on. And feel free to type it in the Q&A box if you have a question about this idea of governance and what it means.
Or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you.
All right. I don't see anything right now, so we're going to move on to the
Oh,
next
we have a
slide.
hand.
Oh, we do. Great. I can't see
Yes.
anybody. So thank you, Carrie, for letting me know.
Yeah, no problem. I will allow her to talk. Go right ahead, Rachel.
Okay, my question is on under the governance. When you
Mhm.
say emphasize external accountability, can you give an example of who that external stakeholder or partner is in this example?
Mhm. So,
External to
ex-
who, I guess.
yeah, it's in the context of school board governance, external to the organization um, means somebody outside of the school. So in our case, it's the voters. We board members are accountable to those that vote for us and put us in our office. So we're not accountable to the superintendent, anybody else, but we are accountable in our case to our voters, those who elect us. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right. So it's funny because I feel like some of my slides are missing, but anyway, the role of the school board, what you see in front of you is what the role of the school board is. The board's job is to provide vision and direction, that is keeping the district moving towards its vision in partnership with the superintendent while simultaneously providing oversight of public education. The school board is ultimately responsible for successful and effective management of the district. So you might ask yourself, how can we as board members be responsible for something if it isn't our role or our job? Well, we don't actually have to do the job of managing. Instead, we delegate this job or this role to the superintendent, who then in turn delegates it as they see fit to the administration team. Clarity is very kind. In school board governance, it's actually mandatory. We need to provide clarity to our superintendent. We need to do this through the vision, the policies, the parameters, and priorities of our district. And then once we do this, we get out of the way. We permit the superintendent the flexibility to lead, manage, and operate the school system and to use their skills and creativity. This is their job. This is what they are hired to do and what they get paid to do. So some people like to think of the role of the school board in these terms. The board goes first and they go last. First, by setting the vision and the policies and the parameters. And then last, by monitoring progress and assuring accountability. So as we saw, the board's job is one of oversight, and it assures that three things happen. One, we set the vision, the expectations or goals to assure that every student in our district has access to a high quality education. Second, we have to make sure that our taxpayers are getting a good return on their investment because it's our taxpayers that vote on our budgets. And third, enabling the system to operate efficiently, effectively, and ethically. And this is something that we will talk about in a little bit. Now, the word trustee is interesting, and it's worth briefly noting here. Board members in Vermont serve as trustees on behalf of the community. So that kind of goes back to your question about accountability. Who are we accountable to? We are accountable to those that elect us. A trustee is someone who has a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the organization that they serve. Trustees are often appointed or elected to oversee the overall direction of the organization, in our case, our school district. And trustees are expected to make decisions that align with the mission and the vision and the goals of the institution, considering the long-term sustainability and well-being of the organization. And trustees are accountable for the outcomes of our decisions. So being a trustee is a little bit different from being a representative. Sometimes people say a school board member is a representative, but a representative is also someone who is elected, yes, because we have elected representatives representing us in the state house, for example. But typically, a representative will serve as a voice for a particular constituency or group. Representatives often will advocate for the interests, concerns, or perspectives of their constituents in the decision-making process. And representatives are not typically entrusted with fiduciary responsibilities. So really, our role as school board members is more similar to that of a trustee than it is to that of a representative. It's nuanced, but it's important to kind of understand the difference and why we as school board members are considered to be trustees. So this is a picture of the cover of your book for those who have it. And if you haven't already done so, please indicate in the Q&A box your name and mailing address so that Carrie can get one out to you as quickly as possible. We will be using it kind of as a pseudo textbook, and you should keep it on hand to use as a reference moving ahead as you're serving on your school board. I frequently will consult with this book when I have a question about something to do with school board work. There's a lot of good information in it. And also I wanted to make you aware that on our website, we have something called the Essential Toolkit, which is very much based on this book. And it has a ton of tools on it that is found if you go into our website and you look under resources, and you'll find the Essential Toolkit right there. So what you're seeing on the screen is basically the table of contents of the book. And for the purposes of this academy, what we're going to focus on is really on chapter 3, which is effective education governance, and look at what we refer to as the 6 domains or pillars of governance. This is getting to the how we do our work. And we will start by looking at that on the next slide. So here are the 6 pillars of essential work of school boards. At VSBA, we categorized a way to organize this very multifaceted governance work of Vermont school boards. All 6 of these domains are equally important and influential in the success of a school district in terms of achieving its goals. You see the 6 pillars here right now. And today we will focus on pillars 1, engage the community and establish a vision, and number 6, which is effective and ethical operations. So in school board governance, it's kind of like an analogy, seeing the forest through the trees. It's essential for school board members to focus on the long-term educational objectives, student achievement, and overall district improvement, rather than getting bogged down by the individual complaints, administrative minutia, or short-term concerns. So by seeing the forest for the trees, we are really focusing on the bigger picture. Board members can make informed decisions that align with the broader mission and vision of the school district, ensuring that their actions contribute to the overall success and well-being of our students, teachers, and our community. Another analogy that you'll sometimes hear people use when they talk about what school boards do is they say that school boards should see the district from the balcony view. Imagine being on a balcony overlooking a scene below. And from this vantage point, you can see the entire landscape rather than focusing on specific elements of it. So similarly, having a balcony view in school board governance means being able to see the overall goals, objectives, and challenges that we are facing in the district and making decisions with all of these pieces in mind. Another term that you might hear people on your board use is that 30,000-foot view. That's a very common expression that people will say, that school boards need to somehow maintain that 30,000-foot view. It describes where the board should be functioning. So basically, it's just another way to describe what your governance job is. So we're going to look at creating a vision, which is part of Pillar 1. We have already spoken about the district's vision in the context of the board's governance responsibility. A vision provides us with a blueprint, if you will. We want to be sure that the vision for our district is informed by what the community wants. Future-oriented and results-focused is really how a vision statement should read. Vision statements should answer these 3 questions. Why does our district exist? This is the what we are here for. It should also take a look at that second question, which is what difference do we want to make to our district? And third, for whom? So when I started planning this academy a few months ago, I decided I wanted to put this kind of to the test and write a vision statement for the new member academy. So when I start something new, like a new program, I like to first articulate the why do we need it? Why even bother creating something? What kind of difference do I want this new program to make? And to which people, to who do I want to benefit from this program? So I wrote this up as a way to guide me as I was deciding how to design this new member academy. So the new member academy exists so that all newly elected or appointed school directors in Vermont are empowered to effectively and ethically govern their district and or supervisory union on behalf of the communities that they serve and for the benefit of all students in the district or the SU. So that's just an example of what a vision statement looks like. Now I'll give you an example of what one looks like from an actual district. In this case, it's the Barstow Unified Union School District. Now we are a policy governance district, as I mentioned earlier. So we don't call this statement our vision statement, we call this our ends policy, which is very similar to a vision. So this says Barstow Unified Union School District exists so that all enrolled students are empowered with the knowledge, skills, and attributes needed to be successful and contributing citizens of a global society by way of the resources invested by the communities. So hopefully all of your districts have a vision statement that's written somewhere. Or again, if you're a policy governance board, an ends policy that is easily found on your website. So if you don't mind, if you can minimize your Zoom screen for a minute and go into your district's website and see how visible or easily, how easily it is to find your vision statement of your school district. And again, if you're a policy governance board, you're going to be looking for your ends policy. So open up your websites, your district websites, then I'll give you a few minutes to look for it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And once you find your vision statement, if you could just write in the Q&A box, found it, so we know that you found it.
We have one so far. Two,
Good.
three. Five. Oh, someone found an outdated version. Someone said it's right on their homepage for their school.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see that. So no, not the mission. If you can find the vision statement, that's what we're looking for. Some will have both. Some districts use a vision statement and a mission statement. I do know of one district that has only a mission statement, not a vision statement, which I find interesting. Okay, somebody could find their priorities, but not a vision statement. Two, three. So far, I see three who found it. Unquestionably, they said they found it. Others found other things like priorities, the mission statement.
It's like a treasure hunt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody said that they found their vision statement at the SU level, and it's their understanding that the district needs to follow that vision statement. Okay, then that could very well be sometimes that is the case where the SU will have the vision statement and then the individual districts adopt that same vision statement. Yep. Somebody else said they're going through a visioning process right now with the community. Great. That's great. All right. So the point of me asking you to do this right now is to see how easy it is to find your vision statement on your website. And if you, as a board member, is having a hard time finding it, then you imagine that the members of the public or your community members also have a hard time finding it. So it might be just something that you want to mention sometime to your board chair or your superintendent. That you went searching for it and it was hard to find, because I really think it's something that should be quite visible, easily found, if not right there on your homepage or your landing page when you open up the district or the SU's website. So after you read your vision statement or your ends goal, do you understand what it means? And could you explain it to others in the community? That's also really important, that you're able to articulate what it means to your community members, because it really serves as your North Star. It's that, what difference does your district want to make and for whom? So it's important that your vision statement answers those questions. Now, moving a vision from paper into practice can be a challenge. So this is another thing you might want to think about as you're going through your initial meetings is your board are you seeing ways that your board is implementing or working towards its vision, putting it into practice? Or is it something that just exists on a website and nobody ever looks at it and nobody ever talks about it? Because it really should be part of your board's ongoing conversations at all of your meetings. It should be used to inform your decisions, and it should be the lens through which all of the activity in your district is evaluated. So I like to see it put on board documents. Like I like to see our vision statement or global end statement put on all of our agendas, or when we warn our meetings, which is also the agenda, and also to have it on our minutes. As board members, as you're out and about in the community, whenever you have a chance to say the vision statement. It's always good to help educate what that statement is to our community members. Because by focusing and drawing attention to it, it really does develop a constancy of purpose that is very much needed to sustain the vision. And it always should be used to help guide your leadership and your decision making. So I'm going to share the screen again and get us back to the PowerPoint. So the board is in its strongest position whenever it is engaged with its community. The board should develop a structured and ongoing opportunities for the community to define and refine the vision for the school district. And in the essential work of Vermont school boards, there's a whole chapter devoted to this and how you can engage your community to either create a vision statement or to update it and revise it, which is something that is recommended to be done every few years. So once your vision is in place, the board then takes on the responsibility for monitoring the progress and making policy and budgetary decisions to help you achieve or move your district towards its vision. So to keep the community engaged in the ongoing work of the district, including both your successes and your challenges, the board must constantly be seeking ways to interact with its community stakeholders in a variety of settings and contexts. One of the most obvious times that community engagement happens every year is around budget time, right? That's the time when you'll have an annual district meeting to present your proposed budget to your voters. And that happens, before your elections happen. And that's obviously when every board is out there talking to its community, because with the objective, they want the budget approved. But really, community engagement should be happening throughout the year, during all 12 months. Again, it's this principle of the board is in its strongest position whenever it's engaged with its community. So that's it for pillar 1. And there's, if you want to know more about it, it's on pages 28 through 35 in the essential work of Vermont school boards. And hopefully you have a little bit better understanding of what a vision is and the reasons why it's important to engage with your community. So without further ado, I'm going to, do you see any questions, or does anybody have their hands raised, Carrie?
Not right now.
Okay. So then let's move on to the next pillar, which is not adopt a policy, but we're going to hop right down here to the lower right-hand corner, effective and ethical operations. As elected officials, school board members must act with integrity and adhere to the highest ethical standards. And we are so lucky to have with us tonight, Kara Zimmerman, who will speak to us about this pillar. And it is a big one. Kara is going to focus mostly on what effective and ethical meetings look like and touch a bit on the behavior outside of board meetings. As you know, most board work is done during meetings, or it should be done in your meetings, your regular meetings, your special meetings, and emergency meetings. So it makes sense that this is where most of the operations of your board is done. And when your meetings are both ethical and efficient and effective, then you are in very good shape. So with that, I will hand the virtual floor over to Kara Zimmerman. Kara, I will run the slides for you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Debbie. As
You're
Debbie
welcome.
mentioned, my name is Kara Zimmerman. I joined the VSBA in 2020 to assist during the legislative session and became full-time in May 2023. I oversee the Model Policy Manual and Policy Services, coordinate the VSBA resolutions process, support VSBA advocacy efforts, and provide training to boards on Vermont's open meeting law and Robert's Rules of Order. I was also the chair of the Stowe School District School Board, the Lamoille South Supervisory Union School Board, and the Lamoille South Unified Union School District School Board. And I was once in your shoes as a new member trying to quickly come up to speed so that I could be engaged and an active participant and contributor on my school board. Next slide, Debbie. I love this slide. As Debbie mentioned, I am going to be providing an overview tonight on efficient and effective board operations, and meetings definitely fall under that category. And Debbie's used this slide before in trainings, and I think it's a really good visual, because imagine if you had to participate in school board meetings in the plank position. Talk about an incentive to run efficient meetings. But alas, it is not a requirement. So the best tools you have available to you to run those short and effective meetings are your agenda and Robert's Rules of Order. So Robert's Rules of Order is America's foremost guide to parliamentary procedures. It is used by professional organizations, government bodies, and in Vermont, it's required by law for school boards to use Robert's Rules of Order. So I'm not sure. Oh, actually, with the way that I have my backdrop, I'm not able to show you, but there is a very large book entitled Robert's Rules of Order. It's the 12th edition that we're working off of. And I would encourage you to talk to your superintendent and school board chair to see if you can get a copy. It's really helpful. Oh, thank you, Debbie. It's really helpful. It's a huge book, and you'll use about 1/10 of it, but it's helpful to bring to meetings as some of these issues come up. So it's a great reference for you. Moving on to
Kara, do you want to
Oh,
mention this one?
yeah.
This is a much better book.
Yes, that's great. I'm glad that Debbie mentioned that. I have that as well. You can kind of see it. This is great. And if you can get your hands on this, on the Robert's Rules of Order in brief, I would strongly encourage you to do that. I used it when I was on the school board. It was always sufficient. I never wished that I had my full copy with me, and it's certainly a lot lighter to carry around. And, you can go through it and tab the relevant sections so that you can quickly refer to them if needed in a meeting. Your school board chair should be really helpful here. So don't feel like you need to know everything at once, but it's just helpful to kind of familiarize yourself with some of the terminology so that you feel comfortable engaging in your meetings. Moving on to agendas, perhaps your school board has a policy on agenda preparation and distribution. The Vermont School Boards Association has a model policy that we've coded A20. And I would just suggest that if your school board has a policy on this, that you familiarize yourself with the process for preparing and distributing agendas. Agendas are a really important tool for getting the board work done. If your board chair and your superintendent set a really ambitious agenda and you're repeatedly not getting through that agenda, it means that you can't get through all the work that you need to do. So it's really important to set a realistic agenda. And then as a board member, it's important for you to understand how agendas are set so that you can inform that process. Public comment, you'll see that on every school board agenda. And it's really important that if you have a policy on public participation at meetings, that you familiarize yourself with that policy. The VSBA has a model policy that we've coded A21 on public participation at board meetings. And this would be more of like a protocol that we recommend school boards establish, are rules for public comment. So it's really important for school boards to have rules and then follow those rules. And all of this is because a board meeting is where the board work is done. It is a public meeting, meaning the public is invited to observe your work and provide comment within those established rules at the designated time in the agenda, but it is not a meeting of the public. So it's not a Q&A session. This is not like free-flowing conversation with your community, because if it were, you would never get the important work of your board done. So this is a really important distinction, and especially during your first year of service, you'll probably constantly be reminding yourself of that. And it's also, it can be hard sometimes, you know, it will be your board chair that will have to manage public comment, but it's hard sometimes to manage public comment, especially when there are a lot of people in attendance who have some strong feelings about certain issues. But it's really important that this period of time on the agenda and at the meeting is well managed, because otherwise it leads to very, very long meetings, and then nobody is really all that happy. Effective and ethical operations. These are crucial to a strong school board. Effective operations are characterized by board members who are clear that they have no legal authority apart from the board. Boards that assure that schools are well run, but do not try to run them. Board members who avoid actual and perceived conflicts of interest. And board members who maintain confidentiality of executive session. Executive session is covered by Vermont's open meeting law. We'll touch very briefly on that in the next slide, but you definitely will want to receive training, if you haven't already, on Vermont's open meeting law to make sure that you are following the law. All right, Debbie, next slide. Ethical meetings are lawful meetings. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to provide a brief overview of the relevant state laws. So as you'll see on this slide, there's a picture of the Vermont Education Law Book. This in the slide is a 2021 edition, but we're up to the 2023 edition. And it's great if you can get a copy of the law book. It's an excellent reference. I used to lug it around to all the meetings, and even if you don't want to, it's just a great reference for when you get home from a meeting, if you have a question. And just like the Roberts Rules book, you can tab it with all the important relevant sections for quick reference. Title 16 contains all of Vermont's education laws. 16 VSA 563 establishes the powers of school boards, so be sure to be familiar with those. 16 VSA 554 requires that a school board meeting be conducted in accordance with Vermont's open meeting law, which can be found in 1 VSA starting section 310. That's also in the law book, and Robert's Rules of Order. And then also the Public Records Law, which can also be found in Title I. Again, all of these should be covered in your orientation, and VSBA also offers board trainings and webinars on the topics. You can go to our website. We've got a fabulous webinar library, and you'll probably be able to find pretty much any topic of interest, but we certainly have open meeting law, which is likely to change after this session. There is a bill making some changes to open meeting law, so we'll have to update that webinar. But open meeting law, Robert's Rules of Order, and public records. Unfortunately, I don't have time tonight to get into the specifics of open meeting law, but I wanted to flag something about public records law that's just kind of important for you to know early on as a board member, and then also make a note on social media. So public records, as a school board member, you are subject to Vermont laws on public records. This includes any writing or recording, an email, a document, a recording of a meeting, a voicemail, or a text. It's really important to keep this in mind when you are communicating with people in your official capacity. All of those communications are subject to public records requests. We recommend that you use your school district email when you're corresponding or communicating with members of the community, your superintendent, your board chair, just to make it easier to comply with any public records request. And then finally, a note on social media. Social media is really tricky. And participation on social media sites like Front Porch Forum or your school Instagram or Facebook can quickly turn into an unintended meeting and thus a violation of Vermont's open meeting law. We go into this in greater detail in our trainings, but I would suggest now that you have conversations with your school board chair to understand what your board rules are around using social media. A lot of boards do not use social media. They will use Front Porch Forum to post meeting agendas, and they'll have one person who's in charge of doing that, so you don't run the risk of having an unintended meeting, meaning like lots of conversations among different board members in a Front Porch Forum thread. You might also appoint somebody on your board to monitor social media activity, so you can kind of get a sense of what your community thinks about different things happening in your school. But again, you want to have a good understanding of what the rules are, because you don't want to engage in conversation on those social media sites and as a result, violate open meeting law. So enough on that tonight. I just would encourage you to talk to your board chair about how your board manages social media communications. And that is all that I have tonight on effective and ethical operations. The essential work of Vermont school boards has a lot of great information on this pillar. And then again, I also encourage you to take advantage of our webinars on any areas where you feel like you might need some additional support.
And asking questions. I think that's always something that I found at the beginning of my school board service, that I was a little intimidated to ask questions that seem very basic and simple, but it's not. It's actually really important that you understand this about open meeting law, Robert's Rules of Order, all those things, because that's not intuitive. It takes time and experience to really get used to it. Are there any questions for Kara about what she said in terms of anything?
We don't have any right now. We'll give them a minute or so in case they were typing some in. I don't see any.
One thing I would add is, if you ever have, this is a good example of if you're ever in doubt about something, whether something is ethical or legal, and you want to shoot Kara or Sue an email with your question, that's always a possibility. As Sue said at the beginning, she's not in a position to give you, or nor is Kara in a position to give you legal advice. But if it's something that's pretty straightforward and the answer can be found in a resource, they're both really good at directing you to that resource. If it's something that really needs some legal advice, then that's a situation where you want to reach out to your school district attorney. Kara, thank you so much. Um, I always am impressed with the way you make such a dry topic rather interesting, even amusing, and easy to understand. You really do kind of describe it in very lay people terms, you know. So thank you. I really appreciate you being here and talking us through pillar number 6.
Good. Thank you all for having me. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you again for your service.
See ya. So as I promised, we'd leave plenty of time at the end for questions of yours that may have something to do with tonight's webinar, or just questions that you have in your mind, something to do with your service already, something that's come up that you're a little unsure about, anything that we can do to help you answer some of those more burning, pressing questions.
I'm not seeing any come up right now, Debbie. Oh, there we
Okay.
have one. Will next week's webinar information be sent out after this meeting? Well, I don't know what you mean by next week's webinar information.
Like this?
There's the date and time. And if you want to sign up for it, you want to go to our events page on our website, www.vtvsba.org. And that's where you go under events and you can sign up for the webinar there. Also, I just want to remind you, as long as I'm saying it, that all of our webinars are free. And if you want to just go on our events page, go to the webinars and just sign up for each of them, that means that within 72 hours after each webinar, you'll receive in your email a link to the video, the handouts, and resources, even if you're unable to attend. And it will also send you 24 hours prior a reminder in case you can attend that one live.
Mm-hmm. So there is a question in there, and it's about community engagement. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope everybody had a chance to take a peek at that slide with next week's information on it.
And yes, Deborah, you do need to sign up.
So the question that I just saw in the box is, what are some typical ways that boards are engaging the community for gathering their input on goal setting? Such a good question. And I love community engagement. I actually think that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is to engage with the community. Sometimes boards will have a public forum. So we talked about the obvious time when you have a public forum, or what we call an informational meeting or a district annual meeting. And that's around the time that you're presenting your budget, right, to your voters. So that's very specific to the purpose of presenting your budget, and with the goal of having the voters approve it. Other times of the year that you might want to engage with your community would be, for example, if you had a vision statement that you felt that the board feels like needs to have another look at, a revision, maybe an update. Post-COVID is, I'm sure that things have changed significantly. The world looks very different today. So maybe your community has a little bit different set of priorities now than it did before the pandemic. So if your board is wanting to consider revising or updating your vision statement, you could have a series of community forums with the board, where you could get an outside facilitator to come facilitate the discussion with your community members. That's sometimes easier as a board member. I find that when I have to moderate and facilitate a community forum as a board member, I feel like I'm wearing these two hats that sometimes will clash. And so it's nicer to have a neutral outside facilitator to help run those community forums more effectively and efficiently. Other ways you can engage with your community, and you're always wanting to think about access and removing barriers to participation. So not everybody might be able to attend a public forum, as I just described. So one way you might want to solicit input or feedback on a question or an issue is to do a survey, to do a written survey, send it out to as many people as you can, have a link to it on the district's website, push it out on social media, invite people to participate in answering the question. That's another good way to try to engage with your community members.
It sure is a lot of information.
And I don't mind finishing early because we did start right at 5:30, which was right on time, and we don't need to go the full 2 hours. We were very efficient. So we are happy to sign off and to end the webinar right here. Just with that reminder that our next section, or the second session, will be next Wednesday, same time, 5:30. Carrie explained where you can sign up for that second session. This recording will be posted in the near future to our webinar archive section on our website. So look for that in the not too distant future. It does take a little bit of time to edit, and to we try to like edit parts out that are not helpful so that the webinar, the recording isn't so long. So don't expect it to appear tomorrow, but it definitely will be up in within a week, I'd say. So if there's no other questions, I'm happy to say good evening and good night to all of you, and to thank you for coming tonight. Carrie, you want to say see you later?
Yes, see you later, everybody. Thanks for coming.